My name's Pat Maley, and I run Yo-Yo Recordings, which is a studio and a record label. And I have to admit that I was surprised to find this tape, which is a reel-to-reel 8-track tape that's from May of '92, because I didn't think I'd met them that early. But now looking at it, it makes a lot of sense. And I also have to say, having two kids, there's a lot of stuff I don't remember anymore, and I don't remember the session hardly at all. But I remember Carp quite a bit from recording them at the Capitol Theater. I remember a lot of those sessions. I remember one of the funniest things about recording Carp is that we get all the tracks done, and then we'd start to mix. And I had this table, nice high table. You can kind of pan over if you want, but it had a mixing desk on it, and it was up in a big chair, and behind me was a couch. And the three of them would sit on that couch. And I think it was probably pretty boring back there when I was like EQing the kick drum or something like that. And they'd get kind of restless, and they'd start goofing around, and they'd start making noise, and they'd start like, punching each other or whatever they were doing. I had my back to them. And I just like keep turning up the volume and turning up and finally I'd be like, you guys have got to shut up. I can't hear. I felt like the dad, like, I'm going to pull this mix over if you guys don't shut up. So that's kind of what I remember about mixing Carp and working with it. And they'd all kind of, sorry. And then they get kind of wind up again and wind up again slowly, and we go through it again. Yeah, so that's what I remember about that.
I think we gotta throw a new tape in.
There's 6 minutes left.
What's that?
You want to get a tape set up just in case?
Yeah, let's just put a new tape in since we're here. But that's awesome. Let me pull this mix over. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Okay. This one, this is 40.
It's 42, I think. I think I labeled the one you put.
40. 41.
This one that's in is 42.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for letting us have everybody over here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, it was nice to stand and listen to Pat's interview just because it helped to jog memories for me about it.
Yeah, King's song was really great too.
Oh, good.
Really pretty. Alright, sorry about that. Okay. Ready? You ready to go on? Okay.
Everything's going.
Cool. So then what after that recording?
Well, there were, back then there were a lot of bands that would come through and record, and I spent most of the shows that I saw either running a festival, because, with a couple other people, Pat Castaldo included, another woman named Michelle Noel, and Kent Oiwa, we all put on the Yo-Yo Go-Go festivals, and so I was either in the control room where it was being recorded, because that's the thing I wanted to see happen the most, or I was doing stuff to put the show, make sure the show was running smoothly. And so I felt like I didn't see a lot of shows, or if I was experiencing a show, it was from the comfort of my control room on my couch. And there were a lot of bands, or I recorded them, so I got to hang out with them for several days and sort of get this fly on the wall view of a band. And there were just a lot of bands that I recorded back then, and basically I didn't have many obligations, and so for me, I would record people for nothing. Or what it eventually became is I would record people to be allowed to use one of their songs on a compilation. I'd sell the compilation, and that's how I bring in money. Or at least that was the theory. I still have an attic full of live comps that I've never sold. But there is a story from the song that's on Julep, which is the second Yo-Yo comp, studio comp, about recording the vocals for Leatherface. Yo-Yo Studio in the Capitol Theater. The Capitol Theater is an 800-seat vaudevillian theater, and the control room for Yo-Yo was in a dressing room. And so I had the dressing room, I had the theater where I would do the basic tracks of the band. And then for vocal tracks, a lot of times I just run a mic and headphones out into the hall. And so, it's a hall that would connect dressing rooms. On the other side was a hallway that got called the commercial wing. It was like offices and artist studios and such along there. When Jarrett launched into the vocal part, because, and it's this disembodied voice because you don't hear the music, you only hears it on the headphones. But when he launched into that just intense yell at the beginning of that song, everybody in the hall next door came out their door and was like, "Is everything okay in there?" Right? But the best story about that moment came a little later when Sam Jane, and I swear I was going to look it up and I forgot the drummer of Lynx. I've forgotten his name. Anyway, the two of them were down in the alley when this happened. And these little kids were just going nuts, running around. And they came running up to Sam and the drummer and said, listen, there's a fight. And Sam goes, "Oh no, that's just Carp." And then the other 11-year-old was like, "Yeah, that's just Carp." Oh, that was a nice moment too. But that was, and that what was great about that moment was that, I had only been in this theater for a couple of years, and I had kind of uneven relationships with the folks on the other wing because I could be kind of loud at times. But at that moment, I just was like, this is such a beautiful thing that's happening. I don't give a shit what they think, and it really allowed me to kind of loosen up about the space at that point, and I really appreciated that about them. And I loved how funny they were and how much they just loved to do what they were doing and how they didn't take themselves seriously. And I just remember so many bands, and it gets confusing when you get a lot of attention, I'm sure, and it's hard to kind of contend with the attention that you get as you become more well-known. But as that happened to them, it never really seemed to change. They were always the same, like, funny guys. They're very approachable, very always nice to me, kind of thing, and I really appreciated that about them. And what Pat was saying about them playing all the time seems right. The fact that I have two or maybe even three, no, I have 4 live shows of them, which is uncommon to have that many. I recorded a lot of live shows just because I could. I set the studio up that way, but to have 4 of them is a bit uncommon. So, yeah.
When I was talking to Chris this weekend, I was asking him about that session that he did. They did with you because it was the first one that they had ever done, and he was saying like that they just had no idea like what to do or anything. And so did you see that? Because of course you were like used to recording bands, so you kind of like you know what you're gonna do, and you kind of know what you expect that they're gonna do. But like, what was it kind of like to have a band in there where it's their first time recording?
I did that a lot, and so and actually that's one of the things about recording an Olympiad in the 80s and 90s that really it turned out to be the most special thing for me was to capture people at a moment that you know, would pass and they would never be like that again, or would pass and the band wouldn't even exist anymore, you know. And so I always approached a band in that way. I'm like, okay, what you guys are doing is great, and I want to make sure we get it down so it's not lost, you know. Except for like it's lost in my storage space now, but you know, I can dig it out and figure it out when somebody wants to do a documentary. But you know, that I'm trying to think back to that time, and yeah, I remember having a sense that they didn't exactly know what was going on, but I didn't care. I loved getting to record people who were that new and that young, and there was a certain purity about it that, you know, would tend to get lost. But then something else would emerge. I mean, listening, you know, we were transferring these tapes and listening to them, and we transferred the '94 Yo-Yo performance, and then we transferred the '97 Yo-Yo performance, and the '94 is great, but the '97, you can tell that they'd been playing every weekend for 3 years at that point, and that they really, so, you know, something else emerged, and that's, I guess, what would happen when they would stick, you know, they would keep at it, you know, instead of just having their band and then vanishing.
Yeah. See, so how did you come in contact with them? Like, how did that first
Well,
recording session come
a
out?
lot of times what would happen is people would know that I recorded for free, and you know, I want to say that John Quintner told me, hey, you should record Carp. And if it wasn't John, it was somebody like that. You know, somebody said, hey, this is a cool band. You should have at them and make a tape with them. So I don't remember who exactly told me, but I'm you know, if you ask John Quintner, I'm sure he'd tell you, because John seems to remember everything. So
Yeah, we talked. We talked to him earlier today, and it was really awesome. I hadn't seen him in a really long time.
right.
It was really funny.
This is off the subject, but he once did this amazing performance about, it was just basically recounting all the closed businesses, all the like long gone businesses in Olympia. And every time he mentioned one and described it, you'd just be like, oh yeah, oh my God. It was great.
Smart guy.
He is. You know, there was another little Carp story that was kind of funny. There was this talent show that included these two kids and their dad, and they had just seen Star Wars. And so the two kids came up. The dad was sitting on the floor. It was sort of towards the end, and we weren't sure what's going on. The two kids would come up to the dad and whisper things in his ear, and he would be like, "Oh yeah, so then such and such happened." And the two kids were taking like Jack and the Beanstalk and Star Wars and just sort of blending them, and then it was being translated through this dad. But one of the things that they did was they said, and then then that music came in, and he'd say, "Oh yeah, that music." So the dad got everyone in the room to do the dun 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 thing, and I was with my friend Nisi of Rebel Beat Factory, who, if he lives in Japan, if you get a hold of him somehow, it'd be great. But anyway, I was with my friend Nisi, and on the way walking home from that, we just kept going dun dun dun, and as we did it, we said, you know, wouldn't it be great to hear Carp play that, right? So a couple months later, there's suddenly this gigantic Star Wars variety show at the Capitol Theater that, you know, they've got like day-glow spaceships suspended on wires so that they drop down on the balcony, so it looks like you're under the battle cruiser and everything, and it ends with Carp playing that for 20 minutes. So, and I bet that's on video somewhere too. There's a guy I could probably hook you up with who has that, but yeah, that's so just from like our walking home and saying, wouldn't that be great if Carp did that, and then mentioning that to a friend, and then somebody else saying, yeah, let's do a Star Wars, let's take Star Wars so far out, and then throw Carp, you know. So that's the kind of environment that Olympia was at the time, and I really miss that. So, but
Yeah. So I mean, I guess describe in like, you know, a few sentences if you can, kind of what Olympia was like at that time, just kind of, you know, just in terms of like how it felt and like, what kind of bands were here. And
It was so exciting. It was so uncommonly exciting. And in retrospect, to think about what it was like and to think about how exciting it was and how there was always something to be excited about. And thinking about that now, I realize how rare that was of a time. There was always a band to be seen. There was always somebody to talk to. Every corner you turned, there was something to talk about or talk with someone about, or I've got this project going, or I'm making another comp, or I'm putting on another festival, or can you play this? And everybody was just everybody was game. Everybody was excited. It was really really great, and and those festivals just the thing I loved about the yo-yo festivals that Carp played two of at least was that everybody brought their A game. Everybody knew that that moment was the moment to be seen in front of everybody because there were people from all over the world there, and to have had some small part in making that happen meant the world to me. It just made me feel like I had somehow managed to take the direction of things and just for just a moment move it a millimeter in the right direction. You know, to see bands like Copas Grinders and the Bloodthirsty Butchers from Japan come on stage and totally blow a punk rock crowd out, to finally have that cultural exchange go the other way, that it not just be Japanese bands all excited about American bands, to have American bands really excited about Japanese bands, and then to have bands like Unwound, I think they went to Japan, but like to have people going over to Japan because of that, and just that, I felt really great about that. It was a really, really brilliant time, and I knew it needed to get documented, and that was the role I took. That was the thing that excited. In fact, the thing that inspired me to start the Yo-Yo festivals was recording the International Pop Underground Convention, which, after a year or so, I said to Calvin, "Are you guys going to do another one of those?" And he's like, "No," and I'm like, "Oh, so I can't record them anymore?" And he's like, "Well, I'll do my own," and that's why I did that. So
it sounds like the way you're describing Olympia, it sounds like the perfect cohesion between the usually polar opposite reasons about why people would move to a city or why people would move to a small town. Is that, you move to a small town because everybody's friendly and you got lots of space and you can do whatever you want, but then usually you're bored. So you move to a big city where you never have any time, you never have any money, but you're never bored.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the 80s, what happened in Olympia in the 80s really set the foundation for what happened in the 90s. And that was that it really was just, you start a band because there's a show at somebody's house. And you start a band and you're a band for that show, and that's sort of it. And, it was just so... Uh-oh. Technical.
My bathroom.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
So am I supposed to go in that?
No, for some reason when I saw you take out the headphones, I was thinking that you were going to tell me that you were thirsty.
Oh.
I don't know.
No, yeah.
That's very
That's
thoughtful.
what got me into this position in person.
Okay, so now, yeah, tell me about that. So you're talking about the 80s. You're talking about in the 80s it was a lot of like one-off
Yeah.
type stuff.
And strange stuff and all sorts of stuff. And I think that was really about, it's what allowed Lois to say that she was punk, even though she played folk music, or that style of music, it's just acoustic guitar and singing. And punk became the substitute word for the DIY ethic. I mean, not a substitute, but that's what it was about. It was about, you do it yourself, you do it because you love to do it, and you and everyone around you is there to support you to do it. And it's, I don't know what much else to say about that, but I feel like that definitely set the stage for what else happened in the 90s.
That was kind of what I was trying to get at with that before, was that, like, it seemed like to me like Olympia was much different than Seattle in the sense that Seattle was very streamlined, and I realized it was manipulated by some folks to make it, here's the picture, you want the record to go with the picture, and here's the weather, but Olympia seemed like always to me like a grab bag, and so the things that made it, everybody call it something, was something that it was almost like if you could place, you know, a point behind the surface. There was something like the surface being the sound or the appearance. There was something that unified all these people that was located somewhere back here.
Right.
You know, that kind of took them all and put them in a line together. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was just I think everyone was really in love with the environment in which allowed them to be creative and allowed them to be excited, and I think that was the common thread. I think that's what that held everyone together and made them realize that they had something in common, you know. And yeah, I mean, I've never heard of another place or time like it. I think Olympia was just small enough that that no one took themselves too seriously, and so we just had a lot of fun, you know. I think that's the thing.
I think you're really right what you were saying about the unifying thread being, you know, the love of the life, because I've been hearing a lot of people say this this weekend, you know, and these are adults, you know, not kids. These are like, you know, mid-30s, you know, they're full-fledged adults, and they're saying, I just really wanted to play every day and do nothing else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In the times when I put on those festivals, it was I woke up. The minute I woke up, it was thinking about my thing, my art, my love, and yeah, it's like I had a big crush on what I was doing for an extended period of time, and I thought nothing about nothing else but her, and it just made me happy at the end of the day. It was the thing that I would do that I wouldn't watch the clock. I wasn't watching a clock. I was capturing something and being a part of something. So yeah, I felt very much at home.
So what do you think of as far as like the legacy, like, you know, looking back for Carp, you know, like I read a review once that said that Carp kept metal alive in the 90s, and you know, I really liked that, but you know, what do you think as far as, like, you know, with the benefit of hindsight now?
I don't think I ever realized that Carp was metal. Exactly. I don't think I ever thought of them as metal. I thought of them as being fun and friendly, and that's what made them accessible to me, you know, and that they just listening to the stage banter in these recordings this weekend. There's a part where Chris broke a string at the beginning of the show, and I think Jarrett says something like, you know, I changed my strings before the show so that I wouldn't look like a jackass in the middle of the show. You know, that was entertainment. That was beautiful. And just the, you know, just on and on and on. I mean, it was like what they could, that thing about them being on the couch and not being able to hold still. That's what they brought to the stage. That was, you know, they're like, we're not entertaining. What's going on? We're just sitting here. This is awful. You know, we got to do something about this. And then and that's what they would bring to the stage. And it was so great about Carp. That's what I loved about Carp.
Where do you think that kind of like chemistry comes from, or that kind of?
From going to high school in Tumwater, and I mean, you know, it took me back a little once I asked, and I think it took me a couple of years to ask what Carp stood for, but it took me aback a little. But then I realized how much sense it made. You know, kill all racist pricks, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense.
It's kill all redneck pricks.
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
I'll either fit, eh?
Yeah, yeah. Totally.
But yeah, no, redneck makes more sense, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Definitely. Yeah, you know, it's funny because I've always just kind of, you know, maybe I didn't think of them as metal back then either. Now to me they seem like an extraordinarily further thinking metal band.
Yeah.
You know, but so what do you think of, like, because of what happened kind of between them with Chris and what eventually happened to Scott? I've kind of started thinking of the style that they started together as being something that eventually became Jared's, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think of that style that they started with all together, and it has, has been kind of, Jared and Scott worked together on the whip, and now Jared's working on it kind of by himself with
Right.
Cody. What do you think of how it's, basically Jared's kind of life work?
Yeah.
Looking at it.
Yeah. You know, you see that pattern a lot in music stuff. You know, the people who have a certain part of the vision take it to a certain place, and then they have to keep doing it, and then, you know, you see it all the time. I mean, I could name off a whole litany of people that's happened to. So yeah, I guess I was always really pleased to see that Jarrett kept going, and you know, it's a struggle to see other people struggle too. When you make those connections and you make those bonds, and then those people start to struggle, that can be very wrenching. Can be very difficult. Yeah, I remember a friend of mine giving Chris CPR and mouth to mouth. I guess I forget what happened to him, but he almost died in his apartment at the barn. I remember my friend doing that, and I'm just like, you know, I remember saying to her the next time, "Thank you for saving Chris Smith." You know, just like that was that. She didn't know him or anything, but yeah, it was to come that close to having lost something that precious was it's wrenching, and it's wrenching to see people struggle with their struggles.
Yeah. Do you think music is good for kids?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I don't really know the backstory, but it seemed like they did what they did because they had to do it, because it was the thing that saved them ultimately. I don't think what went on with them or what goes on with a lot of other people who end up struggling, who happen to do music too, it doesn't seem like it's the music that's doing it. It seems like other influences after they put down the guitar that cause that problem, cause problems for people. But it's yeah, I think music is probably one of the best things for kids. I mean, it's funny, people ask me about parenting because they never see me anymore. And even though I did all this recording and everything, I say, really, my life has never been so full of song and dance. I wake up in the morning singing to my kids and getting them to sing with me and dancing with them, and that, I guess, is that connection I feel to my kids now in my family has replaced that thing that that had to fade eventually, that was going on in Olympia for me musically. So it makes perfect sense to me to say that it had a very family feeling to it in Olympia, because now running a family, I know what that feeling is, and so I can say that they're very much the same.
Well, maybe it also has something to do with like such a strong all ages emphasis in Olympia too, where it's like a little less. I mean, that's why I asked that question. It's because obviously it's great for kids to express themselves and do stuff, but a lot of times it's like, man, is it even worth it if it's going to turn everybody into alcoholics and junkies?
They were probably headed that way anyway. I mean, maybe they would have been worse if they hadn't done the music, if they hadn't had that outlet. Who knows?
But kind of different though in Olympia, where it's less centered around bars and stuff. I mean, what kind of effect do you think that had on just maybe the feeling or just the sentiment?
The all ages, I think that made it a much more inclusive, much more, it was a much more open environment. That kids didn't feel excluded from it created a whole different form of the audience. In Seattle, I imagine, at that time, you couldn't have afforded to have had a club if you didn't have your liquor license, because you wouldn't be able to afford the club if you didn't have the liquor license, because you needed to afford insurance, and you needed to, pay people and then like provide your employees with healthcare and everything. And Olympia was like, we're playing a show in the basement. we're gonna go over to the Capitol Theater, and nobody ever bought insurance for those shows, and it's like then it's like you went to Kinko's and you got your copies made and you put up your posters, and then you made sure that the sound person was going to show up at the time, and you did your thing, and it was great. And the audience could walk in, and it only cost them a few bucks, because that was another part of the ethic, was that you don't want to price people out of things. I remember the theater manager of Capitol Theater getting called a sellout when they upped the Fugazi ticket price to $5.50. After 10 years. So, but that's the thing. Like, that's how important it was to people, that remain something. They felt a real ownership in that regard.
Yeah, and I never thought about it until right this minute, but I realized, like, I was thinking about, I was at that 94 yo-yo, and I was, like, really young, I don't remember, but I was just really thinking about it. Like, I was never thinking that, like, oh, when I'm older I could do this. Like, I was never thinking, like, well, we're doing this until we're old enough to go hang out with the real show or the real kids, and I just right now I'm thinking, I'm 31, and I'm like thinking, like, how awesome it is that you had a place that was yours right now, and that you weren't waiting to go somewhere else. This was it.
Yeah. When I after the first Beat Happening record was recorded at Yo-Yo, which was the very first thing recorded at Yo-Yo, the A side to the Kitty and the Rocket. I said to Calvin Johnson, you can just bring anybody to the studio. Like, I knew there was something bubbling there, and I said, just bring anybody. I'm not going to charge you anything. You can record whoever you want anytime. And so, Some Velvet Sidewalk and Mecca Normal came in, and those being two really different things, but that kind of thing set that foundation. And when younger kids started to come in and doing music, and they had that platform to stand on, So I feel really proud of taking part in that, and to have helped that happen for, a group of people. And, just like that first Yo-Yo, there were kids who took the Greyhound, quit their dishwashing jobs in Texas, and took the Greyhound to all the way to Olympia, and slept on the floor at the end of the hall in the Martin. Oh my God. And like the packages and letters and things I would get from people, just like, and then like some woman sent me a picture of her tattoo of my logo. I'm like, but it was like, it really, it made me feel more responsible in a way. Like I was being entrusted with something really sacred. That might be too overblown, but I don't know.
Well, festivals are really important too, and compilations, because they're, the coolest thing about them, I think, is it's the simplicity of the fact that, like, exactly what you're doing is saying, hey, knock, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just set them next to each other and tell me what you think.
Right. Yeah, like, what was it, Girl Trouble opening for Rancid. And just them dealing with all the Rancid. When we put that bill together, it didn't really even occur to me that would, like, put Girl Trouble in this really awkward position of dealing with all these, like, punk rockers, but they handled it well, and it made for some good entertainment in that way. So, I don't know.
Well, due to the because of the airport, we should probably wrap up pretty soon. But any last statements about the Cart Boys as you remember them?
Yeah, they were probably the funniest. They were the funniest of them all. They were fun and funny, and you could always count on that about them, and I love them for that. So
they'll always be punching each other in the arm.
They'll always be sitting behind me in that couch whenever I'm doing a mix. Turn around quick, and I'll see them there. Exactly.
Nice. That was beautiful. Thank you.